CERC has decided the feed-in tariff. And I would say this is a very logical and a very transparent approach they take. All these are published in the CERC site. They've given their entire worksheets based on which their statement of reason they've given why they arrived at this tariff. And they've done it in a very, very open and transparent way and very logical. Now, a little bit is shown about the carbon energy, the carbon credit or the CD and the clean development mechanism. But I'll give a more detailed explanation as we go. I'll give this slide to circulation. Okay, now we come to what it involves in setting up a solar photovoltaic plant. I am not talking about solar thermal and I'm not talking about biomass at present because frankly I do not have the expertise to do it. Now this would be a very simplistic representation of what it is. You've got the solar photovoltaic modules which are fitted together in an array. You've got the output. A combiner box is just a connection box where you've got a lot of wires which you join together and then you come out with one single wire which goes into the inverter. And then after it gets converted from a DC, because the solar module will produce DC power that has to be converted to AC through the inverters. It will go to the utility switches, after which there will be a step-up transformer, then there will be metering, and it gets connected to the grid. Now, setting up a solar PV plant would involve selection, design, procurement. Now, these three things would come under design and engineering. Then there is going to be installation and commissioning, operation and maintenance. So when I say these three things, selection, procurement, design, these are iterative. This is an iterative process. You just don't go ahead and say, okay, I picked Mr. X who will design it, I take the design from him and then Mr. Y will go to the market and purchase what is required and Mr. Z will install it. It doesn't work that way. Because when somebody is going to design it, he's going to take certain assumptions into that. And then when you go to the market with that design, you find that you are not able to you purchase what he's asked for. Then you come back to the designer. He'll say, okay, I'm getting this material, only this quantity, now what to do? So you redesign it. So this is an iterative process which keeps going on. And then after you've procured it, you install, commission, and do the operation and maintenance. Now this is what a project EPC is about. Engineering, procurement, and construction. It involves this whole process right up to installation and commissioning. Now in solar photovoltaic, now there are people who do project EPC, then there are people who do project development. A project developer would bring in the balance equity. Suppose you've got a certain amount of equity. You need to set up a plant with 100 crores investment. Now out of the 100 crores, 30% is going to be equity, which is your own money, and 70% is going to be debt or loans. Right? The project developer, suppose you had to invest 30 crores and you have just 10. The project developer will bring other equity partners so that the equity of 30 crores is made up. Then he bring in the 70 crores of debt and he will do the EPC, set it up and run it for you if you want. Now, these are the components of a solar farm. These components have to be selected, they've got to be designed, and then you have this detailed engineering of it, which will involve the mounting structures. Then the land on which you've got to install it has got to be prepared, you've got to install it in the correct manner, you've got to commission it. Now this is where I would like to say a few things. 12 years ago in Germany, a similar feed-in tariff was announced. It was quite lucrative, and a lot of people went in and invested, and a lot of people won their figures. So that, and why did they burn their figure, comes out because of three reasons. The first is, this is a long-term investment. You are setting up a plant which is going to perform for 25 years. And you as a project developer are giving a guarantee to the government or the purchasing authority that you will give them this much of power for 25 years. And that guarantee is in the form of a bank guarantee. So if your plant does not produce as you have predicted, you are going to lose your share. Right? So, in order to enable you to produce for those 25 years, first you've got to pick the right material. You can't just say, okay, if this guy is setting up for 17 crores per megawatt, I am a very smart businessman, I'll set it up for 14. Obviously, you can set it up for 14, but then you're going to lose your share 5 years down the line. So you've got to be very, very careful about this. Please do not become an expert unless you obviously gather all the knowledge. Please go to an expert to get it. That is very important. But later on I'll show you about the sensitivities of cost, sensitivities of output, sensitivity of debt, and how it relates to the project IRR. Now this is an example of a project development we are doing. Now it's taken as a part of this project. It is a 20 megawatt solar project in Jodhpur, Rajasthan. Now this project would be an $80 million project, out of which 20 million would be the equity and 60 million the debt. For this project we are arranging debt from the US Exim Bank at 6%. Be payable over 15 years. Now I think that is the part where we get a different project IRR, a much better IRR because of the debt. Now project IRR pre-tax will be about 14% and the equity IRR over 20%. So the team members for this project are Naren Bakshi, who's, I think most of the Thai people would have an idea about who he is. He would be the chairman of this. And then there's Dr. Prabhu Goel, who's the lead investor. He's also founding chairman of Singh Solar, which is a thin film manufacturing company in Germany. Then there's Sandeep Banot, who's the co-founder of State Solar. There's myself and there's Dr. Pradeep Pandey. We are setting up this project in Jodhpur. Philology is the vessel. This is how it would look like when we set it up. And here is the part which a lot of you would be interested in. Right? Now I have put in three scenarios. I have put in three scenarios because there are a lot of variables. If you look at the conservative scenario, I have taken a project cost of 18 crores per megawatt. The debt I have taken as 70%. The debt rate I have taken as 10%, which is also pretty, I think, aggressive considering if we take a loan from any Indian bank As of now, they've reached interest of about 10.5, but with a little more pressure, they may get it down to 10%. But as of now, 10.5 is what they are talking about for, and they have taken the debt term as 15 years, which is again a little stretch. Generally, any bank would give a debt for about 10 years with a repayment. But we stretch it a little over here also. We've taken the feed-in tariff as 17 rupees 91 paise and not 18 rupees 44. Because the way we look at it is the final guidelines are not yet released. They are scheduled to be released as per the latest information. Today morning I got that information. On the 16th of this month they will be announced. And that's when the expression of interest will be called for by NBDA. So I'm not sure we can reach the commissioning date of 31st March 2012 because it would take some time to get the PPA signed. So that's why I've taken it as 17 rupees 91 paise. So even if I take it as that and I take a system degradation of 0.7%, the system degradation is like if I put up a solar panel, every year that is going to degrade by a certain percentage. That is going to give me lesser power year on year. So that I've assumed as 7% for the conservative calculations, and that gives equity IRR of 14.5%. Now, the most likely scenario if I've taken a project cost of 16 crores per megawatt, a 9% interest rate. Now, as I said, we are getting 6% from the Exim Bank, but then it is a dollar loan, so there will be a lot of dollar hedging. And taking that into view, it should bring it to 8%, but I've assumed 9% of the year. You never know which way the dollar goes. That will be for 15 years. And I've assumed 0.6% over here. And the estimated generation is about 15.5 lakh units per year, per megawatt. This is again a conservative figure. I'm pretty sure.
This figure is for what area? Are we talking Rajasthan or Punjab?
This 15.5 for Punjab will be perfectly. It will be very important. For Rajasthan, this will go up to about 16 lakh units per megawatt.
What is this Singh?
This is 19%. So if you take all this into consideration, we get an equity IRR of about 23%. The aggressive, like I'm not going to go into, it doesn't really mean very much. But the most likely scenario would be this. And here I am being conservative in two places. One is in this degradation. Degradation, I've assumed it as 0.6% per year. But I'm pretty sure this is going to be less than 0.4% per year. Second is...
Do we get any guarantees from the manufacturers about the degradation percentage?
Yes, you will.
We get back-to-back guarantees for us.
Second is estimated generation. I am pretty sure for the Jodhpur area, this is going to be much more than 16 megawatt for a fixed angle. We are going to have some mechanisms which will do seasonal variation, which will increase our output by another 4%. So this is a very, very conservative figure which we are assuming. And it gives a pretty good equity IRR.
So how does it fare if, God forbid, you don't get under MBB and then you don't get into the solar mission? And if you are getting at 15.34 instead of 17.91?
It still gives me about 16.5% IRR, equity IRR.
So I'm taking a little back, as you had said that many people in Germany lost their shirt because they checked quality. Can the blame of quality be shifted? Can the burden of quality be shifted to the equipment supplier rather than the project operator?
Now that's where I wanted to talk to you. Like a lot of people I've been talking to, they say, okay, I'm going to go and buy the modules from China. Very well. In China also there are two types of companies. There are some good companies and there are some companies which are not so good. The prices are very different. Now suppose you buy a module from a company which is not very good in quality. You buy the module, it performs well for the next 2 years. After 2 years, it does not perform. What do? You go back and tell them, replace the module. They'll say, no, I'm not going to do it. Or by that time, that company is bankrupt. So you're left with the whole cheaper. So those are cases which you've got to keep in mind.
So are there currently any structures in which you could actually push the burden off to the equipment supplier on a long-term 25-year basis?
You could do that, but then you've got to choose suppliers who are financially sound, who've been around for the last 30, 40 years, and who are not going to go under in the next 5, 10 years. So you've got to do that prediction, and then you've got to pass it on. But then you cannot have a 14 crore per megawatt project.
Obviously, the suppliers will be troubled.
So are there insurance companies which are co-insuring
Yes.
the modules?
They do that, and that's exactly the model which they are following in Europe when they buy products from China. They do exactly that. They have a co-insurance, but then it's a cost. Nobody is doing it for free. And when you equate the cost, it comes down to a world range. Any cost if you buy it from Europe or US or China.
The photovoltaics are interchangeable between manufacturers on a single panel?
Yes.
Yeah.
On a single panel, no.
Yeah.
On a
Panel.
single array, yes.
Okay.
Like I can have one panel of Sharp and another of Hitachi and another of Mitsubishi. That doesn't make
Not on a single panel, it's not
Single
possible.
panel is hermetically sealed. You cannot change anything.
So one question. I'm sure there's a lot of work that is being done on photovoltaic cells, etc. The output that is available today, I'm sure it isn't the same output that was available maybe 5, 10 years back.
Yes.
So, is there something happening which is going to be dramatically as far as output is concerned from each cell? So that, these calculations of a megawatt from about 5 acres would be 2 megawatts from 5 acres?
Like as of now, when we say a megawatt from 5 acres, actually you need about 3.5 acres. But 5 acres is the norm which has been fixed by them. It was necessary about 4 years ago.
So, we are still continuing to talk about that?
Yes, we continue to talk. That still remains.
And like my initial question, if the output of the cell increases, let's say, is there something being seen next 2, 3, 4 years?
Yes.
There is.
Like if you look at
Then what happens in the case where I invest today 18 crore rupees for a megawatt for the sake of calculation, and tomorrow's technology, 1 year down the line, somebody's output doubles with the same amount of land, same amount of investment.
that proportion. Like
If not double, even if it goes up by 20% or
That
whatever.
is okay.
but your tariff comes down proportion. Year on year. They have taken that cost into account when they've calculated the tariff. So as I said, we did a little bit of sensitivity and
On the last slide,
yeah.
over here your scenarios are assuming rates of interest from 6 to 10%.
Right.
For Indian project developers, this is not a very likely scenario.
I agree.
These are mostly from Exim Banks based in the United States, or maybe even US dollar funds and Treasury notes. Over here, this is not a likely scenario. It could be anything between 10 and 12.5%, depending on the conservativeness of the banks as the sector is starting to shape up. Now, if you put those figures there, but tariff that is on a decline, and various other personal guarantees, which I'm not quite sure which have been either factored in here or not, do you still see equity IRR which is acceptable to the financial
Yes.
institutions?
I'll show you another calculation based on that. I'll show you a spreadsheet. It is still working out to do that. Now, sensitivity with respect to each of these. Like that and 6%. 10% for 15 years, 10% for 10 years, and 6% for 15 years. Sensitivity is pretty high, 32%. Estimated generation 1.5 to 1.6. Like this is something which most people do not take into account. Most of these other things, these two things, everybody takes into account. These are the two factors which most people don't take into account. Whereas you've got 27% sensitivity to your IRR over here also. It's equally important. So as a project developer, this is one thing which you should be taking into account. So please, whenever you're looking at your projects, have a look at this part. It is important. Now, this was one question which had come, the carbon credit. Now, as you can see the policy, 100% to be retained for the first year. Second year onwards, 10%, if it reaches 50%, and then it's 50%, right? Now, the calculation, how it is calculated is worked out pretty clearly over here. So per megawatt, you get about 1280 tons of CO2 per year. Now this sells at a varying rate. As of the last 6 months, the rate is pretty much stable at around 8 euros per ton. But you never know, will this work or will this come down? Not yet clear. This carbon credit market is not a very mature market as of now. So this is something which we have not factored into the return on the investment. Because we are not very sure about what the returns will be. But this is what it is. And assuming the same rate for a 20 megawatt plant, it ends up giving